Welcome to the Muscle Expert Podcast with Ben Pakulski, one of the world's top professional bodybuilders, an expert on human performance and mindset mastery. Ben dives deep to deliver the strategies of the top experts to upgrade your body, mind, muscle, strength, performance, biochemistry, and how to become the upgraded modern man.
Hey everybody, welcome to a special episode of the Muscle Expert Podcast. Special because I'm solo on this one. I want to talk to you guys about how my life has changed over the last 24 months. Not only my life, but my thought process around muscle building and how I frame building muscle now. How I frame, building your greatest body and living your greatest life. And, for many years, I lived this reality of a professional bodybuilder chasing after extreme amounts of muscle. I wanted to be the biggest human being on the planet, not only the biggest, but the best. I climbed the ranks of professional bodybuilding. I made it relatively far, further than anyone ever thought I would. The kid who was at one point extremely obese as a child went to a vegan long-distance runner when I was 14 to 15. It then evolved into someone who was at one point 321 pounds with an 8-pack. I learned a little bit about muscle building. I learned a lot about what to do, and I learned a lot about what not to do. And as a professional bodybuilder, I lacked role models, especially in the sport, and not to throw anybody under the bus, but I always wanted to do it in a way that was healthy. I always wanted to do it in a way that was intelligent, that was thoughtful. I always wanted to make the most of everything I was doing. And I think the reason that I wanted to do that was because I know that I wasn't very good at building muscle. And that sounds ridiculous coming from a guy who got to 321 pounds. But I had a really hard time. I think a lot of people built muscle faster than me. There was a lot of guys much more muscular than me. I didn't have a particularly easy time getting lean. I walked around definitely not lean all the time. There was a lot of struggles. And after having removed myself from professional bodybuilding, I'm incredibly grateful for my struggles. The irony of life is the greater the obstacle, the greater the opportunity for progress. And I had a lot of obstacles, I had a lot of challenges. I really had to learn. I had a lot of great mentors. I had a lot of great coaches and teachers and people who led me through my amateur bodybuilding career, through my professional bodybuilding career, and now into my retirement and removal from professional bodybuilding. And now my biggest focus is, I want to live an amazing life. I want to be a great dad. I don't want to be a good dad. I want to be a great dad. I want to be a great leader. I want to be a great businessman. And I want to lead the next generation of amazing human beings. And I realize I have an amazing platform of great followers like yourself. And I just want to take advantage. And I feel like, I owe a debt of gratitude to you for listening. And I don't want to let anybody down moving forward. And that's just the transparency. So I'm so grateful to have your ear as I transition away from professional bodybuilding. And I want to teach you about how I frame muscle building now for myself and how I frame it for clients who come to me wanting to build their greatest body. Whether you want to be a professional bodybuilder and compete in the Mr. Olympia stage, or if you want to just be, someone who just looks their best for what they're given, or if you want to be a lady who just wants to feel amazing, look amazing, and be able to perform. The framing that I've created is what I call a brilliant mind and resilient body, and that's ultimately what I want, right? Brilliant mind speaks for itself. Resilient body, I want to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. I want to be able to run and jump and play basketball and lift heavy weights and look amazing doing it. So my framing now has shifted a lot, and it still is very much focused on intelligent training, right? That's never going to go away. I'm always digging and digging and digging on how I can optimize this process, and not just optimize the process anymore. It's how I can optimally teach the process, right? So obviously I understand teaching muscle. I understand muscle. So if you can come to my gym, I can teach you how to build a tremendous amount of muscle, probably better than most people on the planet. But being able to convey that to someone in a simple way that allows them to grasp on, create a bit of a foundation, and build on it on their own is a challenge. And I've been blessed over the last 5 and 6 years to be able to teach thousands and thousands of people around the world. And so my framing of muscle building has been the basis of my business over the last 5 and 6 years. And myself and my team were great at that. Like I would beg to argue there's few people in the world, or if any, that are better than us at intelligent muscle building, putting muscle on anyone's physique and learning what works for you, not doing what I do, right? If somebody says do it because I said so, red flags go up. Let's not do that. But moving beyond that, you realize that training alone is not enough. Nutrition and training alone are not enough. Eating great food and training really hard is not going to get you where you want to go. Training harder and harder and harder is not going to get you where you want to go. It's going to come down to training smart first. And then and only then does hard training actually benefit you and really truly make a difference. And this podcast is not meant to be about training per se. This podcast is meant to be about the 6 pillars. So I want to walk through those now. And just to give you guys a framework of where these came from, for the last 2.5 years, I've been really trying to narrow down what I want to do with myself and what are all those things that contribute to the success of my clients. And if someone comes to me, and I'm blessed to be able to train some very high level people, what are the bottlenecks holding them back from progressing? If we look at somebody's life subjectively, we stand back and say, what are all these things that are directly contributing to success or failure? And how do we start to help you remove the bottlenecks? And so here's how I frame the 6 pillars. So the bottlenecks to success, or the bottlenecks to getting this amazing physique for you, go as such. Training is obviously at the top of the totem pole, because the way you train is going to dictate how your body looks. If you don't train, the likelihood of having a world-class body or a body that you love is very low. And realize that anyone can build a great body, right? Use the cop-outs, lose your excuses, genetics, time, lack of knowledge. It's all BS. You absolutely have the ability to build a great body for you. You may not be a professional bodybuilder. You may not be a professional basketball player or an Olympic sprinter, but you can build an amazing, amazing, amazing body for you. And it's not because your parents were fat that you can't. It's not because your parents ate plastic that you can't. You can absolutely overcome all those things if you pay attention to these 6 pillars. So training, top of the totem pole, intelligent training, smart first before hard. Moving on from there, I think the next most important thing, and again, the order here is a little bit arbitrary, but it seems to be relatively consistent, is the autonomic nervous system. And this is something that's only come into my world, at least deeply into my world in the last 2.5 to 3 years, and something that I'm probably most fascinated with right now. And if you don't know what the autonomic nervous system is, I'm not going to give you the university level course, but it's effectively how our body interprets the environment. So everything that's happening around you, your body's constantly taking inventory. And if it's a stressor in any way, it could be positive or negative, you're going to have a sympathetic response, meaning your sympathetic branch of your autonomic nervous system is going to be stimulated or amplified. And if you have something that's a calming stimulus, it will be a parasympathetic response. And it's massively studied right now that the balance or tone of each branch of these 2 branches of the autonomic nervous system is going to determine function of your body. So if I'm someone who is very sympathetically oriented, meaning I have a lot of stress in my life, my brain's always racing, I'm always in anxiety or fear, the likelihood of building a great body is substantially diminished, if not impossible, right? So the response you're looking at, if you want to follow it down the whole chain of reaction, your brain's going to first react. You're going to get what Dr. Rick Hansen calls the second dart. The event happens, and that's a stress in itself if it's an external stressor, and then a response to it amplifies that. And learning to control your response is massive. But then we're getting this massive amount of stress happening in the body, which is indicated by an increase of adrenaline in the body, increase of cortisol, 2 very, very catabolic hormones breaking down your tissue effectively to mobilize energy so that you can fight or flee. It's called the fight or flight response. And all of this happens at different levels when you are subjected to any type of stress. And stresses can be anything from as simple as looking at your phone, getting an email or a text that maybe is a little bit off-putting, or driving in traffic where somebody cuts you off, or you're getting in a fight with your spouse, or your kids getting on your nerves, or your boss not being nice, or stress around finances. I know it's a big one for a lot of us. So all those things, even if you don't think about them consciously, are still running in the back of your mind, right? It's the spinning beach ball of death on your computer. They're always running in the back of your mind. You have all these programs open in the back of your mind. And if they're there, even if they're not in the conscious front of your mind, are still exerting a negative impact on your autonomic nervous system, on your sympathetic nervous system to be specific. And if those things are running, you're going to have a really hard time building muscle optimally, which is why a lot of people say, I can't build muscle, or I just look at carbohydrates and I get fat, or I have bad genetics. Well, the reality is none of those are true. So we just need to learn to start paying attention to what are my sympathetic inputs and how can I start to get rid of those? How can I start to close those loops, right? If I have some financial stuff, okay, let's figure it out. If I have some relationship stuff, okay, let's figure it out. If I have some environmental stuff, okay, let's figure it out. If I have some anything that's causing a toxic burden on my body is a stress. That could be psychological or physical. So thinking your way through that is extremely important. And just make a list like, hey, here's all the things that suck in my life right now, and be real with yourself. And it could just be, your belief about who you are and what you're doing in your life right now. It could be your job. It could be your relationship. It could be your childhood. Lots of things are causing trauma in the body. And this is why, the podcast is now framed around much more than just muscle building, because I realize, guys, that you can train as hard as you want. You can crush it in the gym and not build any muscle. And we all know people like that. Like, oh yeah, man, I can't get any muscle. And then they get discouraged and they quit. So I'm trying to remove all these bottlenecks here so you can actually build an amazing body. So the flip side of the sympathetic nervous system is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest nervous system. And this is what's going to effectively prepare your body for calm down your nervous system, calm down your mind, prepare your body to, as it says, rest and digest, break down food. So what are the things that are contributing to the parasympathetic response? Well, it's deep belly breathing. Diaphragmatic breathing is the gateway to the parasympathetic nervous system. Meditation, anything that is reconnecting with nature, getting some morning sunlight, getting yourself outside, connecting with people. We're very, very social creatures, so we need to be very, very aware of connecting with other people as a great sympathetic response. Love, sleep, all these things are sex. All these things are very great parasympathetic responses, and take advantage of them, right? You want to do them as often as you can. So I literally suggest to a lot of my clients that you make a chart. If you're someone who's like, I'm having a hard time losing this fat or building this muscle, make a chart of all your daily sympathetic inputs and all your parasympathetic inputs. And at very least, those should balance out. Ideally, the parasympathetic outweighs the sympathetic, which seems not to be the truth for a lot of people. Because when you start to dissect all the sympathetic inputs, all the stressful inputs, you start getting into things that are environmental that you're not even aware of, which is one of the pillars that I'm going to talk about a little later in this episode. So all these environmental things that are negatively impacting your autonomic nervous system. And you got to start paying attention because you can control it. A lot of them are insidious and they're very hard to be aware of, but at least having some conscious awareness and maybe in time starting to shift your life away from the things that I'm going to talk about just in a minute and the environmental inputs of life. So that's how I frame the autonomic nervous system. And it's important to realize that training in and of itself is a stress, right? Sometimes even food is a stress, causing an immune response in your body and your autonomic nervous system. So learning how to train based on your autonomic default. So we all have this kind of baseline where we live, right? Some people are just more anxious people. Maybe they show a little more muscle tone, maybe a little more tense. Maybe they're type A personalities. They tend to be a little more sympathetically dominant. They're going to require a different type of training, a different type of nutrition than someone who's parasympathetically oriented, right? So somebody who's parasympathetic is going to be very relaxed, very calm, maybe soft-spoken. Maybe they're going to have a little less muscle tone. They actually might build muscle a little bit easier than someone who's very type A driven or just very stressed. It's very important to think about that. That person's going to require more a very different type of stimulus, or can subject their body to a very different type of training stimulus, right? They have the ability to recover. They're going to need more things to kind of pick them up. They may need some things that are more amplifying to get them up and get them motivated to work. Whereas the recovery for them is going to be the easy part. And if you want to dive deep into this stuff, I did a podcast with Andy O'Brien, who's a brilliant, brilliant guy, very, very recently. And he kind of enlightened us on how he approaches that with professional athletes. Super interesting stuff. So training is a sympathetic input, no matter how you frame it, right? And if you're already very sympathetically driven, very stressed, and you go in and you add massive amounts of stress on top of that because you're hashtag crushing it today, you're literally kicking yourself in the butt and preventing any type of muscle growth and progress. That's a huge issue. So paying attention to where is my autonomic nervous system right now, and the way you do this is with heart rate variability. So if you're not already tracking your morning heart rate or your phases of sleep, it's very important. And I suggest that everybody go out and pick up an Oura ring, which is an amazing ring that I'm wearing right now. You guys can see this if you're watching this on video on YouTube. I wear it every night when I sleep, and looking for a greater differential between the high heart rate and the low heart rate. The greater the heart rate variability, as the name indicates, the greater your preparedness for exercise. So effectively, when you're sleeping, your brain and body is going through different levels of excitation. And we want our heart to get really excited when we get a little bit aroused, and we want our heart to really calm down when we relax. And there's some really interesting studies out of the military that suggest you could have a swing of as much as on a massive inhalation, the Russian cosmonauts have had a heart rate of 90 beats per minute. On exhalation, brings it down to 40. Imagine that much of a swing, a 50 beat per minute heart rate swing on one breath. That's pretty amazing heart rate variability. As far as like trainability of that athlete's ready for absolutely anything. That's a very interesting thought, right? And whereas if you're someone who, when you're sleeping, have a heart rate differential of 60 to 62, well, you're not very prepared for anything. Your autonomic nervous system is not responsive, right? You want your autonomic nervous system to calm down, chill out. And also conversely, like when I'm ready to go, it amps up. That's very important. That shows health of the heart. That shows health of the blood vessels. That shows health of the vagus nerve. So all these things are very, very important. And that's, really interesting topic for me right now. And as you guys can see, hopefully by my examples, that it's extremely valuable in your understanding of, well, how should I be training for me? So I'm the guy teaching you how to train structurally and mechanically, right? But there's also this next piece of, well, how do I train based on where I am today? And I'm certainly not the authority in the world on that, but there's other people out there who are doing a really, really good job with it. One that comes to mind is Joel Jamieson. His business is 8 weeks out. He will soon be a guest on the podcast. Joel and I have been communicating for a long time. Brilliant guy, talking about preparedness for exercise. So you guys know, since my exit from bodybuilding, a big part of my life has become this whole meditation, breathing, and parasympathetic input piece. And now you understand why. Because if you're not someone who is parasympathetically dominant, you're going to have a really hard time building muscle. So, or staying lean, or dealing with kids, or thinking. This is all correlated with bringing your brain waves down into an alpha state that allows you to focus, allows you to be creative, allows you to work, right? And not be constantly working in the monkey brain, right? When you're in a high state of sympathetic arousal, you're out of your cerebral cortex and you're into your monkey mind, and that is a huge problem. Monkey mind, lizard brain being, you're just reactive, you're primal rather than actually responsive, and that's a huge problem. So doing your best to get yourself out of this sympathetic tone. Without letting that drag on too long, moving along, the next pillar is sleep. So sleep is obviously massively impacted by everything we do, and especially autonomic nervous system. So sleep is a big one, guys. If you're not mastering sleep, the likelihood of building muscle or having a great body or having a great mind is very, very diminished, very, very challenging. So paying attention to sleep. And I did a whole podcast on all the hacks for sleep a little while back. Big things that I'm realizing is a massive one is light. And if your light exposure is incorrect, you're going to have a hard time. There's also a great podcast I did with Greg Potter very recently, talking about circadian biology, circadian rhythms, how our bodies have a natural rhythm that they go through each day. Your brain and your cells have this natural rhythm that's typically determined by your sleep-wake cycles historically, but now is massively impacted by light. So, some simple hacks: get outside in the morning, get yourself some sunshine on your face as long as you possibly can, ideally connecting with the earth at the same time. And there's a lot of science behind that stuff too, and I'll talk about that a little bit in the environment section. But get outside, get some sunlight, because the amount of lumens coming out of the sun, the amount of radiance coming out of the sun, is much higher than anything you're going to experience inside. And if you're living in, unfortunately, one of those northern countries or states, you want to make sure you're getting some type of red light. So like a Juve light and infrared light is a great thing to subject yourself to that high amount of infrared that you would typically get in the sun. 10 minutes a day of a Juve can be massively shifting to your sleep. And the opposite side of that is, at the end of the day, getting rid of all light, right? So trying to base your life around the cycles of the sun. So as the sun comes down, I want your lights in the home to be off. Get a dimmer switch, turn them off, do some candlelight, no TV, no blue light or phones or computers after, for me, it's about 7:30 p.m., like two and a half hours before bed. Trying to do your best to allow your brain to actually do what it's supposed to do. Because if, the suggestion is 30 minutes of blue light exposure is going to delay the onset of melatonin release by up to 30 to 60 minutes. So melatonin is that hormone that's going to be, anti-cancer. It's going to be preparing our body for sleep. It's a great antioxidant. Many, many benefits there. So super interesting stuff around sleep. And that's my biggest hack. And I think for all my clients, that's been a big big shift, is learning how to monitor light. And again, the other ones obviously being temperature is also a great one. So again, moving along from there, now we're moving into nutrition. And when you talk about transforming your body, everyone thinks nutrition is the top of the totem pole. And I would beg to differ. I would argue that you are not what you eat. You are what your body does with what you eat. And your autonomic nervous system is going to be the one of the primary factors in how your body responds to the food you eat. And the second one's obviously going to be your gut and your GI tract, right? If your microbiome is disrupted or you have a dysbiosis, your likelihood of having a great body again is disrupted no matter how well you eat. If no matter how much chicken and broccoli you think you're going to eat, and now don't take that as you should be eating chicken and broccoli, but no matter how much you eat, it's not going to work. You're going to have inflammation. You're going to have a negative response to food. And that is so important to realize that it's not what you eat that matters. It's what your body does. And, the idea of eating a healthy, quote unquote, healthy meal, whatever that is, in a sympathetic state compared to a parasympathetic state, gives your body two completely different signals. If your body is in a highly sympathetic state, like post-workout, or when you've just been stressed and you're shoving food down your gullet, there's going to be a problem. It's going to sit in your stomach. Your body literally doesn't digest. It's shunted all the blood away from your gut into your limbs so that you can fight or flee. And that's a big thing, guys. So don't be eating when you're stressed. Slow down. Take 3 minutes, 5 minutes to breathe before every single meal. Another part of this nutrition piece is, as I just mentioned, GI health, gut health, and digestion. All these things kind of tie into this whole nutrition piece. And I think, as you hear, by the way, I speak about it, the gut is obviously massive, the microbiome is massive, and gut health is a big thing. So, if anyone comes to me, the first things I address is we try to remove toxic burden. I think getting rid of the GI inflammatory compounds, whether that be pharmaceuticals, whether that be massive amounts of glyphosate, plastics, all those things are huge in allowing your body to start healing its GI tract. And there's a bunch of other supplements. I'm not going to get into recommending supplements on the podcast, but there's a bunch of other supplements that we recommend to start healing your gut. But the first thing, before any detox supplements, before any improved excretion, before anything else matters, the first thing, guys, is removing the toxic burden. And that's what I call the first phase of fat loss, right? Is you remove the psychological burden, remove the physiological burden, which is foods, like I say, plastics, anything that's toxic potentially, right? Get rid of them. Otherwise, you just don't stand a chance. You're causing an inflammatory response in your stomach. Your immune system reacts, and you get an immediate kick up of the autonomic nervous system. Your body starts eating away at itself, becomes inflamed, you become insulin resistant. It's this huge cascade of negative consequences of just having a little bit of GI distress. So, and that comes down to the quality of food you're eating, having massive amounts of glyphosate, which we know is a big problem. And I've done lots of podcasts on this stuff because it's a big, big thing. And anything that can cause potential irritation to your gut lining. So nutrition, as much as you guys think is, the end all and be all of building a body, it's obviously important, but it's only as useful as your body's ability to use it. So think about it. Fix your GI first. If you came to me and you wanted a diet tomorrow, I wouldn't even write you a diet. I'd write you an elimination diet and say, I don't care what you eat or how much. Just don't eat these foods, or just eat these foods. Maybe conversely it works that way. And you guys know I frame my nutrition around 6 basic foods that I eat a lot of. So it's wild meat, as close to kind of wild as we can get it. Sometimes it's not quite wild, but at least it's not farm raised. I eat a lot of greens, so a lot of vegetables. I eat a lot of berries. I eat a lot of cacao. I eat a lot of olive oil, avocado, and coconut oil, and that's really all I eat. And I've just started introducing eggs a little bit again, and they feel great. So I took them out for a long time because as a professional bodybuilder, I was eating egg whites early in my career, and I had a intolerance. I couldn't tolerate them. I felt like terrible. So after 4 years of maybe 5 years now of removing them, I put them back in. I feel great. And never removing the yolks, always even eating more of the yolks when possible. So nutritionally, there's a lot of levels to how to eat. But I guess if you guys want to get into a little bit the mechanics, I'm going to do more podcasts on this. I promise I'll do each pillar as one podcast. And I've also got documents that I've written on my beliefs on how to optimize each of these. And the nutrition document is also inclusive, as I said, of GI stuff and digestion. And it's also inclusive of supplements. So how do you supplement to optimize muscle building? Well, it depends, right? It depends on a lot of things. And the way I approach it is minimum effective dose for the thing that's holding you back right now. But again, not the topic of discussion for today. Supplements have an absolute place in optimizing performance. But before a supplement can work, doesn't it just make sense that my body should be optimized as far as health first, right? If the supplement's helping me return to health, great. Otherwise, I'm doing everything I can to kind of create this healthy lifestyle, healthy environment that allows me to flourish, bringing myself up to, what is effectively baseline where my body should be, or it's not literally fighting against itself, causing constant inflammatory responses. And then and only then can I actually think about pushing performance, right? So a lot of people in the muscle building world start taking steroids because they think that they don't have genetics to build muscle, and they absolutely do. They're just too lazy to do all the things on the back end to optimize their health, which is exactly what I'm teaching you right now. So that gives you a basic overview around nutrition. Now, the last two are the ones that I think a lot of people are maybe resistant to paying attention to.
They only record for 30 minutes.
Sure. Now onto the last two pillars. The first one being mindset. And mindset can directly tie into the autonomic nervous system. Obviously it does. But I think the champion's mindset is something that goes beyond just kind of reacting to your environment. It's creating that positive framing of life. It's creating a get-to attitude rather than have-to attitude. It's learning to be grateful for absolutely everything as you realize that your greatest obstacles in life are your greatest opportunities for progress. So when something gets hard, when something in life sucks, smile. I know it's hard, and I struggle with it some days too. But step one is creating an awareness around what is causing me stress, where is my negative default, and how do I overcome that? Realizing that negative default is a good thing because we're born with that for a reason, to keep us alive. So it's very important that you realize that, yes, this is there for a reason, because 1,000 years ago or a few thousand years ago, this would have kept me alive, running away from predators and being skeptical of everything around me. Like, oh my goodness, I don't want to die. That tree over there or that branch over there kind of looks like a snake. That default is important, and be grateful for that. But realize now you have the ability to change it. It doesn't need to be your constant default anymore. Learn to create a positive framing and an attitude of gratitude toward life, and your life will change, and your body will change, and your autonomic nervous system will change. And that's the baseline of stuff. And then beyond that, it's an achievement attitude, right? I'm eliminating all the things in my life that are time drains, that are procrastinations, and I'm actively working toward my one thing. What is that one thing in life that really pulls me, that I want to really work toward? And I want to drive as aggressively as possible, right? I want to be a ferocious lion when I'm running toward this one thing I'm trying to attack, and not being afraid of what other people think, not being afraid of what's going to happen, consequences. Because if you put your all into anything, you can do anything. And that's important to realize. And a lot of people sell themselves short for numerous reasons, but just maybe their inadequacy, they don't feel like they can win, they don't feel like they can succeed, and they're also worried of what other people are going to think if they do fail. And who gives a shit? If you did fail once, throw your hands in the air, 2 middle fingers to the world, and go, let's go again. And let's try it again. Many times I failed trying to become a professional bodybuilder. Many times I failed in competing, and a lot of things I failed at, they've become my biggest strengths, because you learn what not to do, and you become much more wiser for it. So taking that attitude of, man, like, I can do anything, I can crush this, because you can, and starts with paying attention to the words coming out of your mouth. Everyone has an I have to, I can't, it's impossible mindset, or a lot of people do, and remove those words from your vocabulary, right? Like, I've started implementing it with my kids. I can't, I have to, and impossible are words that we remove from our vocabulary, because what do you mean? You can't yet? Or Daddy, I don't know how, maybe, those kind of things. Remove it from my team, remove it from my staff, my clients. Like, just get rid of it. It doesn't help you. Let's figure out a way to train your brain to say, okay, I can't yet. How do I do it? Rather than putting that immediate block on you. Like, well, how do I learn to do it? I want to learn to be better at that, right? There's a lot of things that I would have otherwise, or a lot of people said I couldn't do. And, with my rebel attitude, if you guys heard my podcast with Gretchen Rubin, that really drove me to put 2 middle fingers to the world and say, okay, watch. I can't run through that wall. Let's go. And I think you guys want that attitude, and learning that you can do anything, and no matter what anybody says, you're the only one that matters. Put your head down, do the work, create a plan, create some habits. life is habits. If you don't have great habits, you fail. If you only have so much conscious energy, you only have almost conscious time to focus on anything in the day. You need to learn to make the things that are trivial to you autopilot. And that trivial things are like, hey, that morning routine. Well, I need to floss my teeth every day. I need to brush my teeth every day. That just happens. I don't think about it. I don't question it. I just do it. My meditation in the morning, I just get up and do it. I don't question it. So it's not thought anymore. It's just autopilot. And then I can actually focus my conscious thought on something that's valuable for my big picture, my big mission. So putting a lot of things in your life on autopilot, it only takes 30 days, right? If there's something that you want to put on autopilot, like a morning walk for 30 minutes, which I highly recommend you guys do outside, 30-minute walk every day, just do it. Do it for 30 days. No matter what happens, sleet, rain, snow, hurricanes, outside, 30 minutes, go. You can do it as soon as you wake up. And if you have to do it inside, run on the spot for 30 minutes, whatever it is, right? Get outside, do 30 minutes, and then that becomes autopilot. It's something you do. It's no longer a challenge. Now I can focus all that conscious energy and attention on something that's bigger. And without dwelling on the mindset stuff too much, mindset is something that I absolutely love and I'm fascinated with. And I think I was blessed with an attitude of, I'm going to do it anyways. Especially when somebody said I couldn't, I would always smile and I would say thank you and move on, because anything I've put my mind to in my life, I do, and I do well. And it's only because failure just doesn't even cross your mind. The idea of not being a professional bodybuilder never crossed my mind. The idea of not competing in Mr. Olympia never crossed my mind, because it was the attitude of, I will do whatever it takes to get there. Now, is that always a good thing? Arguably not, right? But I wouldn't have my life any other way. I would do whatever it takes to accomplish my goal, and not at the expense of obviously hurting people or being negative or anything like that. But there was many times in my life where I shut the world out. I literally had blinders on, and I said, if you're not helping me, you're hindering me. If you're not helping me go in this direction, you're in my way. I'm going to crush you. And that's an important thing to think about. I've evolved in my thought process since my aggressive teens and 20s, but I still think it's an important thing to think about, that if you're working towards something, and there's always going to be an easy way out. The world is going to test you with things that are just, oh gosh, that pizza over there is just so easy. It's right there. Or, hey, that person over there, that person who may not be my spouse is right there. That's easy. That's not what you want. You don't want easy, right? You don't want easy. You want what's best. And don't ever take the easy way out. And I have sometimes in my life, and I've learned, and it's not making you better. Every single moment of your life is an opportunity to become the best version of yourself. Every single moment. It doesn't matter who's watching. If you're in a room by yourself, nobody's going to know you ate the donut, but you will. But you'll always know. And it's important for you to realize that you're the only one that matters. Everyone else fucking cares. I don't give a shit about anybody else, and either should you. Like your character, the only person that cares about your character is you. And that's if you believe in yourself, so will everyone else. So develop the type of character that always follows through with something they said they're going to do. And this is the idea of daily discipline, right? Set yourself up to be successful with daily discipline. And to wrap up our 6 pillars today, I want to talk to you about the environment. Now, this one's the one that sounds like it's not sexy, but listen to it because it's so much more important than you think. As I kind of alluded to in the autonomic nervous system piece, light, sound, air, EMF, water, all contributing to how your body interprets the environment, right? These are all environmental inputs. They're all environmental stimulus that are causing your body, typically your autonomic nervous system, to react in some way, positive or negative, or your GI tract to react in some way, positive or negative. And ideally, all of these things cancel each other out and are not in any way negative stimulus. But for most of us, guess what? The insidious nature of these things is crushing us. The prevalence of blue light, the prevalence of EMF is destroying us. The prevalence of estrogen and chlorine in water and glyphosate is crushing us, not only as an individual, but as a species. It's being passed to our children through epigenetic cross-generational expression, verified by Dr. Anthony J. at the Mayo Clinic and a group of guys out of the UK that I'm interviewing very soon as well. All these things are confirmed. So start paying attention. Start paying attention to what's going into your body. And nothing is mindless, right? Everything becomes very mindful and responsive rather than reactive. And that's where this meditation piece comes in, because it's so easy for us to go back to our evolutionary default of just react. Primal instinct, go. No, it's going to crush you in these days. You have to be able to think through your way through everything. Imagine going through the world like you're Neo in the Matrix, where everything slows down and you can respond to things. I can pay attention to what kind of water I'm drinking. I can realize I'm drinking from a water bottle. I can choose my words correctly. That's the ideal scenario. And most of us, unfortunately, don't live that because we're in this state of high sympathetic arousal. Our cerebral cortex can't work. It's literally just a reactionary lizard brain situation where we're just responding rather than reacting. So the environmental inputs are definitely negative inputs to our mind. Light is affecting our sleep. Light is affecting our mitochondria. No question, our energy producing cells. Air is loaded with glyphosate. It's loaded with tons of chemicals influencing our autonomic nervous system, our immune response. EMF is everywhere. It's insidious. This whole new 5G thing, if you haven't listened to the environmental episodes, check that out. I'm not sure exactly which one it was offhand, but there was two episodes at least where we talked about the insidious nature of EMF. And as this 5G comes on, it's literally going to be impossible to avoid. So whenever possible, try to not get 5G in your house and try to wire your house. Turn your phone on airplane mode, all these things, because listen, man, if you guys want to live a long life, which I do, and I know you do too, there's no question we can live to be well into our hundreds if we don't destroy the earth. No question. We've got the scientific advancements, but whether or not we do is going to depend on us taking action. So I recently interviewed Zach Bush, who's going to give us an awesome insight into how we can start to live for the future. So everyone's talking about glyphosate, how it's going to kill us. We all know that. Great. But tell me what to do to fix it. And he's graciously allowed us to take part in his education of farmers. So like, hey, here's some methods of growing crops without having to use these insidious pesticides and herbicides that are allowing you to have a greater crop yield, but ultimately killing your children, your grandchildren, and the human race. That sounds awesome, right? That's something I don't want to do. But if we can help them with growing practices that are effective and practical and ultimately financially lucrative, we win. So let's get involved with it, guys. And so you understand the framing of my life. This is what I'm looking at right now. These are all the things that I look at. I think I've given you pretty much everything that's going on in my brain right now over the last few months. And there's all these different ways, ways to hack the system. And I think that's great. But without laying a foundation for success in your body, without laying a foundation for health, building muscles isn't a possibility. Fat loss isn't a possibility. Being happy isn't a possibility. If you have too much sympathetic stress, you literally can't think your way out of a paper bag. And that sucks. So as far as action items for you guys, own your mornings, own your nights. The rest of the day is the whirlwind, right? You can't control what happens in the middle of the day, but you can absolutely control the way you start your day, the way you put your brain into an alpha state to start your day, the way you become proactive rather than reactive. And, start and journal, plan your day the night before, plan it out. I know exactly what I can do, when I'm going to do it. And if you can do that, your life will be more productive. And I confess I don't do that every day, but the days that I do, or the weeks that I'm very, very consistent with it, life just goes better. Opportunities present themselves. You make more money, you meet more people. Life is great, and less stress, less fights, less negative impacts. The times when you don't, or you don't make time, you're going to lose. And that's, maybe you'll get lucky and win occasionally, but you're going to lose. And it's important to know that it's very easy to not do, right? It's very easy to not meditate. It's very easy to not journal. And your brain will give you rationalizations as to why you don't have to. You got to be strong. You got to find your motivation as to why you have to do it every day. And again, that's a long process, but commit to 30 days. We're creating a 30-day transformation thing, life transformation thing. Just like, hey, do these 30 habits over 30 days. And it's one a day. Like, just knock this out and life will be much easier for you. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed the conversation around the pillars, and I don't want to let it go on too long, but I'd love to hear from you. So if you have any questions about the pillars, if you have any comments, if there's any guests you want to hear on the podcast, I would absolutely love to hear from you. You can head over to iTunes right now and leave a review. If there's anyone out there who is trying to live their greatest life in their greatest body, like, I'm so grateful for you guys when you share this episode, when you review it, because this is what drives the podcast. And we are able to do this podcast because of people like yourself sharing it, incentivizing sponsors to come on and help us out. So ultimately, there's a production cost behind this. There's a time cost. So I'm so grateful for you guys, and hopefully you love the information we're putting out. I'm so grateful for the feedback we're getting every day on social media. If you guys don't already follow me on social media, it's BPAK Fitness, BPAK Fitness. on Instagram. Twitter will soon be the same if they let me change my handle. It's currently IFBB BenPack, but love to reach out to you guys, love to chat with you on there. And as always, I hope you're living your greatest life in your greatest body. Enjoy all the Muscle Expert episodes.
Join us on benpakulski.com to learn the cutting-edge techniques to take control of your body, your brain, and create your greatest life.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Ben Pakulski and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.